I'm Gina Parker, 30 years old. I'd spent months grinding on freelance graphic design projects, skipping networking events to save $10,000 for my brother's wedding at Printworks Bistro in Greensboro, North Carolina. That money was my gift to him to make his day perfect. But when I got to the venue, a staff member handed me a paper badge that read, "Limited Access Guest." I stared at it, thinking it was a mistake. My brother leaned in, whispered, "That means you can't eat," and walked away. My parents standing nearby just scoffed like I was overreacting. My heart sank, but I wasn't going to beg. I walked straight to the gift table, grabbed my envelope with the $10,000 check, and said loud enough for the room to hear, "I don't think you'll be needing this anymore." The gasps hit like a wave. My brother ran after me, shouting, "Come back!" But I kept walking, the sound of my heels clicking against the floor, leaving behind the panicked shouts and stunned faces. The door closed, and I knew tonight was only the beginning. If it were you, what would you do in this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to know if your answer would be the same as what I did. After walking out of my brother's wedding, I drove back to my apartment in Greensboro, the $10,000 check burning a hole in my purse. I got home, tossed my keys on the counter, and sank onto my couch. Sleep wasn't an option. My mind kept spinning. How could my own family do this? I'd spent months taking on extra freelance graphic design gigs, staying up until 2 a.m. on logos for startups, skipping a big industry conference in Raleigh to save that $10,000 for his wedding. I thought it would mean something, that they'd see me as part of the day. Instead, I was just a guest with a paper badge. By 7 a.m., my phone buzzed. A WhatsApp message from my mom, Ellen: "Gina, don't overreact. It was just a seating mix-up." A mix-up? I read it 3 times, waiting for an "I'm sorry," that never came. Then my dad, Kenneth, called. I stared at his name on the screen, my thumb hovering, but let it go to voicemail. His voice was too calm. "Hey, call me back. We need to talk about last night." No regret, no accountability. I tossed my phone onto the couch, my stomach churning. They were acting like I'd caused the problem, like I was the one who'd embarrassed them. A few hours later, another message from Ellen come to the house. "We'll sort this out." I didn't want to go. My gut screamed to stay away, but a small part of me clung to hope. Maybe they'd explain. Maybe they'd care. I remembered other times they'd brushed me off, holiday dinners where my ideas were ignored, family trips where I was the last to know. Still, I grabbed my keys and drove to their 2-story brick house on the edge of Greensboro, the one I'd grown up in with its neat lawn and faded shutters. I walked in, and nobody stood to greet me. Ellen sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee, her eyes flicking up like I was interrupting. Kenneth was across from her, scrolling on his phone. My brother Kyle and his new wife Stacy sat on the couch, both looking uncomfortable. Ellen started setting her mug down. It was a logistics error. The venue messed up the seating chart. Kyle nodded, staring at the floor. Stacy just picked at her nails, avoiding my gaze. I waited, hands in my pockets, for someone to say they felt bad, that they shouldn't have let me stand there with that ridiculous badge while they sat at the head table. Instead, Kenneth looked up and said, "The wedding was hectic. These things happen." My jaw clenched. Hectic? I'd wired $10,000 to the venue, Printworks Bistro. Doesn't just mess up for that kind of money. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "So nobody's sorry?" "You're fine with me being treated like a stranger at my own brother's wedding," Ellen sighed like I was exhausting her. "Gina, we needed the tables for close family and the bridal party. You know how it works." Close family. The words cut deeper than the badge. I wasn't close enough. Kyle finally spoke, his voice low. "Look, we still need that money for the honeymoon. Can you just put it back?" Stacy glanced at him, then away, like she wanted no part of this. I felt my face heat up. "You think I'm just a walking checkbook?" I asked, staring at him. Nobody answered. The silence was heavy, like they expected me to fold, to hand over the money and pretend it was fine. But I was done playing that game. I looked at Kyle and said, "I'm not sure you're in a position to ask for anything right now." His eyes widened like he hadn't expected me to push back. Ellen broke the quiet. Gina, think about your brother's happiness. This isn't about you. That line hit like a punch. I turned to leave, my throat tight. Driving back, my phone lit up again. Ellen? Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I didn't reply. At home, I poured a glass of wine and sat at my desk staring at a half-finished logo design I'd neglected for their wedding. That's when the doubt crept in. Was this really a mistake? Or had they planned to push me aside from the start? I opened my laptop, still logged into the family Google Drive we'd used for wedding plans. I was just checking receipts, trying to make sense of what I'd paid for. Then I saw an email notification, one I hadn't noticed before, from Ellen to Kyle, dated 3 days before the wedding. My finger hovered over the mouse. Something told me I wasn't going to like what I found. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that email from Ellen to Kyle, sitting in the family Google Drive we'd used for wedding plans. My heart raced as I opened my laptop, the screen glowing in my dark apartment. I click the email. Ellen's words hit like a punch. Kyle, make sure Gina's not at the family table. We need space for Stacy's friends. She's paying enough anyway. Kyle's reply was worse. Got it. I'll tell her it's a venue error. My hands shook as I read it again. They'd planned it. My own mom and brother decided I didn't belong even after I'd wired $10,000 for their perfect day at Printworks Bistro. I wasn't a sister to them. I was a sponsor. The next morning, Kyle called, his voice softer than usual. Gina, come to Mom and Dad's. We need to talk. I didn't trust him, but I wanted to look them in the eye to see if they'd admit what they'd done. I drove to their 2-story brick house in Greensboro, pulling into the driveway with my stomach in knots. Ellen was in the kitchen, stirring her coffee like nothing was wrong. Kenneth sat at the dining table, flipping through a newspaper. Kyle and his wife Stacy were on the couch, their hands clasped, but Stacy's eyes stayed on the floor. Nobody greeted me. The silence felt like a wall. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So you want to explain why you plan to kick me out of the family table? Ellen's spoon froze mid-stir. Kenneth looked up, his paper crinkling. Kyle's jaw tightened, but he spoke first. Gina, it was a logistics error. We told you. Ellen nodded. The venue messed up, honey. Let's not make a big deal. Kenneth added, we just need the money back for the honeymoon. Can we move on? Stacy stayed quiet, her fingers twisting in her lap. I tilted my head, keeping my voice steady. You know I might reconsider giving the money back. But first, let's talk about honesty. Kyle's face lit up like he thought I was folding. Ellen sipped her coffee, relaxing. Kenneth smiled like we were all good. Stacy just watched me, her expression blank. They thought they'd won. But then I remembered something else. 2 years ago, Kyle had begged me for $5,000 to start his coffee shop in downtown Greensboro. I'd just finished a big branding project for a local restaurant, and I gave him the money, no questions asked. He'd promised to pay me back when the shop took off. He never did. That memory sparked something in me. I glanced at the corner of the living room where Kyle's laptop bag sat by the TV stand. It was my old MacBook, worth about $1,500, that I'd lent him last year when his crashed before his shop's opening. He'd never returned it, never even offered. I walked over, picked up the bag, and slung it over my shoulder. I'm taking this back, I said, staring at Kyle. His face turned red. What? That's mine, he snapped, standing up. I raised an eyebrow. No, it's mine. I lent it to you just like I lent you $5,000 you never paid back. Ellen slammed her mug down. Gina, this is outrageous. You can't just take his things. Kenneth stood, hands raised like he was calming a storm. Let's all relax. Gina, put the laptop down and we'll figure this out. Stacy finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Gina, we didn't mean to hurt you. I ignored her, zipping the bag shut. Kyle stepped closer, his voice sharp. You're doing this over a seating chart. Really? I met his eyes. My heart pounding, but my resolve firm. No, Kyle. I'm doing this because you and Mom plan to treat me like a nobody, and I'm done paying for it. Ellen called after me as I headed for the door. You're being selfish, Gina. But I didn't turn back. In my car, I tossed the laptop bag onto the passenger seat. My hands trembling, but my mind clear. I'd given them a chance to come clean to show they valued me. Instead, they'd lied again. Back at my apartment, I set the laptop on my desk, the email still open on my screen. I wasn't done with them yet. They needed to face what they'd done, and I knew exactly how to make that happen. Back at my apartment in Greensboro, I opened my laptop, the email from Ellen to Kyle still glaring on the screen. I took a screenshot. Every word of their betrayal captured Ellen's order to keep me out for Stacy's friends, Kyle's agreement to lie about a venue error. I opened our family WhatsApp group, the one we'd used for years to share updates and photos. My fingers hesitated, but only for a second. I sent the screenshot with a single line, "Care to explain this." Within minutes, my phone lit up. Ellen texted first, "Gina, you're blowing this out of proportion. Let's talk." Then Kyle. "Why are you airing this in the group? Call me." Kenneth called, but I let it go to voicemail. His message was the same old tune, "Gina, calm down. We can work this out." No apologies, just demands to sweep it under the rug. I stared at the group chat, waiting for someone to own up. Nobody did. Instead, Ellen sent another message. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I laughed bitterly. Harder for who? Then I remembered the $5,000 Kyle owed me for his coffee shop. He'd borrowed it 2 years ago, promising to pay me back when his business stabilized. His shop was doing fine now. Instagram posts showed packed tables and new latte art, but he'd never mentioned the debt. I opened a new message just to him. "Since we're talking trust, I need the $5,000 you owe me by next week." I hit send and waited. My phone buzzed almost instantly. "Kyle, you're bringing that up now. I don't have it." I didn't reply. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The group chat exploded. "Ellen, Gina, this is unfair. You can't hold that over him." "Kenneth, let's meet again and sort this out." I ignored them, but then a private message came from Stacy. I hadn't expected her to weigh in. She'd barely spoken at the last meeting. Her text was long, hesitant. "Gina, I knew about the seating plan. I didn't stop it because I wanted the wedding to be perfect for me and my friends. I'm sorry you got hurt." I stared at her words, my chest tightening. She knew. She'd stood there at the wedding, smiling in her white dress while I was handed a limited access badge. Her apology felt like too little too late. I didn't respond to Stacy. Instead, I went back to the group chat and typed, "I gave you $10,000 for a wedding that pushed me out. I lent Kyle $5,000 he never repaid. I'm done being your ATM." I hit send, my hands steady now. The chat went silent for a full hour, unheard of in our family. Then Kyle called, his voice panicked in the voicemail. "Gina, don't do this. We need that money." Ellen texted again. "You're tearing this family apart." I almost laughed. They'd torn it apart when they decided I wasn't worth a seat at their table. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. Kenneth tried a softer approach. "Gina, we're family. Let's fix this." Kyle sent a long text claiming the coffee shop was struggling and he'd pay me back soon. Ellen called twice, leaving voicemails about family unity. None of them said sorry. None of them acknowledged the email or what they'd done. It was all about the money, my money. Stacy sent another message begging me to meet her alone, saying she felt bad. But I wasn't falling for it. Her silence at the wedding spoke louder than her words now. I sat at my desk staring at the logo design I'd been neglecting for a client. My phone buzzed again, another group chat message from Ellen trying to guilt me. "Think about your brother's future." I closed the app, my finger hovering over the Leave Group button. I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let them keep using me. They'd crossed a line, and I was already planning my next move. The days after I sent that screenshot of Ellen and Kyle's email were eerily quiet. My phone, usually buzzing with family group chat notifications, went silent. No calls from Ellen, no texts from Kyle, not even a voicemail from Kenneth. The WhatsApp group, I'd posted the email in just crickets. I'd expected them to blow up to argue or beg, but this silence felt heavier, like they were waiting for me to break first. I sat at my desk in my Greensboro apartment, staring at the logo design I was supposed to finish for a client. My eyes kept drifting to my phone, but I refused to reach out. They'd made their choice when they pushed me out of my brother's wedding, and I wasn't going to beg for their attention. A week later, I decided I was done with the waiting game. I opened the family WhatsApp group, the one we'd used for years to share grocery lists, vacation plans, and wedding details. The screenshot of Ellen's email to Kyle telling him to keep me off the family table was still pinned at the top. Nobody had responded. I scrolled through years of messages, my suggestions for family dinners, ignored my updates about freelance projects, met with cool or nothing at all. I'd been invisible to them long before that limited access badge. My finger hovered over the Leave Group button. I hit it and the chat disappeared from my phone. Then I opened Facebook, found the family group there, and left that too. It felt like cutting a cord I'd been clinging to for too long. My birthday came a few days later, my 31st. In years past, Ellen would have called to plan a dinner, or Kyle would have shown up with a cheap card and a promise to hang out soon. This time, nothing. Not a text, not a call. I didn't expect one, but the silence still stung. I ordered a pepperoni pizza from Mellow Mushroom, a Greensboro staple, and ate it alone on my couch, a glass of wine in hand. The TV played some reality show I wasn't watching. I lit a single candle on a store-bought cupcake, made a wish for a fresh start, and blew it out. It wasn't sad exactly. It felt like freedom, like I was finally choosing myself. That evening, my phone pinged. A private message from Stacy, my brother's wife. I hadn't heard from her since her text admitting she knew about the seating plan. Her message was long, typed out like she'd spent hours agonizing over it. Gina, I'm so sorry for what happened at the wedding. I should have spoken up when Ellen and Kyle planned the tables. I was caught up in the moment, wanting everything perfect. I feel awful. Can we talk? I read it twice, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to believe her, but her apology was too late. She'd stood there in her white dress, smiling with her friends, while I was handed a badge that said I didn't belong. I set the phone down, leaving her on read. The silence from the rest of the family stretched on. I started looking at my life differently, like a fog had lifted. I'd been pouring so much into them: $10,000 for the wedding, $5,000 for Kyle's coffee shop, my old MacBook, expecting them to see me. They never did. I opened my laptop and started searching for office spaces in Raleigh, about an hour's drive from Greensboro. I'd always wanted to start my own graphic design studio, something small, but mine. I found a listing for a shared workspace in downtown Raleigh, $2,000 a month, perfect for a freelance setup. I emailed the landlord, my heart racing with something I hadn't felt in a while: possibility. Over the next week, I packed boxes between client projects. My apartment, a one-bedroom I'd rented for $1,200 a month, was full of memories I didn't want to carry. Old photos of family vacations, birthday cards from Ellen and Kenneth, a mug Kyle gave me when his shop opened. I tossed most of it into a donation bin. My phone stayed quiet except for one last text from Ellen: Gina, we're still family. Don't shut us out. I didn't reply. She hadn't mentioned the email, the wedding, or the $5,000 Kyle still owed me. It was just another guilt trip, and I was done falling for it. By the end of the month, I'd signed a lease for the Raleigh office and found a new apartment nearby. I wasn't running away, I was moving towards something better. The family I'd spent years trying to please had shown me who they were, and I was ready to let them go. As I packed the last box, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Stacy asking to meet. I didn't open it. I was already looking ahead to a life where I didn't have to prove my worth to anyone. Weeks after I left the family group chat and blocked their numbers, I was packing the last of my Greensboro apartment ready to leave it all behind. I'd already signed a lease for a new place in Raleigh, a one-bedroom for $1,500 a month, and a shared office space for $2,000, where I'd start my own graphic design studio. The silence from my family was deafening, just as it had been since I'd exposed their email in the WhatsApp group, revealing how Ellen and Kyle planned to push me out of the wedding for Stacy's friends. I didn't expect to hear from them again, and I didn't. My phone stayed quiet. No texts, no calls, no apologies for the $10,000 I'd given for the wedding, or the $5,000 Kyle still owed me for his coffee shop. I was done waiting for them to see my worth. As I taped up boxes, a friend from Greensboro, Sarah, texted me. She'd heard through the grapevine about my family's fallout. Kyle's shop closed last week, she wrote. Signs down, windows boarded. I wasn't surprised. Kyle's coffee shop, the one I'd helped fund with $5,000 2 years ago, had been struggling for months. I'd seen it on Instagram, empty tables, fewer posts, a closed for maintenance sign that never came down. Sarah said Kyle had mismanaged the place, spending more on fancy equipment than marketing, and hadn't paid vendors in months. The $5,000 he owed me was long gone, buried in his failed dream. I felt a pang, not for him, but for the part of me that once believed he'd pay me back. Sarah also mentioned my parents, Ellen and Kenneth. They'd been telling relatives I'd overreacted to the wedding, but their story wasn't landing. A few family friends had pulled back, uncomfortable with how Ellen had orchestrated the seating plan to favor Stacy's guests while I footed the bill. At their church group, whispers about their behavior had started to spread, and Ellen's usual social calendar, book clubs, charity lunches, was noticeably quieter. Kenneth, always the quieter one, had retreated further, avoiding questions about me. They were starting to feel what it meant to lose me, not just as a daughter, but as someone who'd held their world together with money and time. Stacy, Kyle's wife, was facing her own fallout. Sarah said she'd overheard Stacy at a local cafe trying to explain the wedding drama to mutual friends. She admitted knowing about the plan to exclude me, but claimed she didn't think it was a big deal. Our friends weren't buying it. They'd known me for years, seen me pour everything into that wedding only to be handed a limited access badge. Stacy's attempts to smooth things over fell flat, and her marriage to Kyle was fraying under the stress of his failed business and the family rift. I didn't feel sorry for her. She'd made her choice when she stood silent at the altar, letting me take the hit. I loaded the last box into the moving truck, my MacBook, the one I'd taken back from Kyle, safely packed. I drove the hour to Raleigh, the city's skyline welcoming me like a fresh start. My new apartment was small but bright, with a view of downtown. The office space was even better, a corner spot with big windows perfect for Parker Designs, the studio I'd named after myself. I hired an assistant, a recent art school grad named Mia, and we set up 2 desks, a coffee maker, and a whiteboard for brainstorming. My first client was a Raleigh craft brewery needing a logo and packaging design. The work felt alive, like I was finally building something for me, not my family. Months later, I stood in my studio reviewing the brewery's finished logo on my screen. It was clean, bold, exactly what they'd wanted. Mia was already scheduling calls with new clients, a boutique, a tech startup. Parker Designs was small, but it was mine, built without a single dollar from anyone else. I'd heard more about my family through Sarah. Kyle was working odd jobs now, unable to restart his business, his credit shot from unpaid loans. Ellen and Kenneth were still in their Greensboro house, but their social circle had shrunk, their reputation dented by their own actions. Stacy had moved out temporarily, staying with a friend while she and Kyle figured things out. I didn't gloat. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about their choices catching up to them. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to prove myself to them. The $10,000 for the wedding, the $5,000 for Kyle's shop, the MacBook I'd lent him. They'd taken it all, given me nothing but a badge that said I didn't belong. Ellen Parker. My mom and Kenneth Parker. My dad had chosen control over love. Kyle Parker. My brother had chosen greed over loyalty. Stacy Parker, his wife, had chosen silence over fairness. I, Gina Parker, had chosen myself. Here's what I learned: family doesn't define your worth. If they don't value you, walk away. It's hard, but it's better than letting toxic people drain your life. Don't let them hold you back like I almost did, pouring money and heart into people who saw me as a means to an end. Thanks for listening to my story. If it hit home, subscribe, like, and comment below. What would you do in my shoes? Let's talk about it.